From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Thank you very much, Ollie Barrett. Tuesday's Richie Allen radio show. Wet, windy, miserable northwest of England. Salford and Greater Manchester. How you doing? Have you had a good Tuesday? Thanks for joining the programme. I've rushed into the studio. Literally ran up the stairs. Forgot the time. The news came on. 3 minutes. I thought I've got time to go to the toilet. Yeah. Disaster ensues.
Get your tits out, get your tits out, get your tits out for the lads. Get your tits out.
It's the Richie Allen Show. Broadcasting live on richieallen.co.uk and multiple platforms around the world. And now, here's your host, Richie Allen.
I am the biggest feckin' child that ever lived. I told you this. Off the booze, off the beer, off the rum and cokes. And I'm as big a child as I was when I was 5 years old. Welcome to the programme. Enough of the arsing around. Serious stuff tonight. Mark Steele, 5G awareness campaigner, tech expert, returns to this programme. I think it's been about 2 years since Mark was on. Some of his colleagues have been on the programme since then. We're going to talk 5G because there's a lot of 5G news in the UK media today. Mark Steele, live in hour 2 of the programme. Before that, though, the Labour leadership contenders are rushing to sign up to the 10 pledges demanded of Labour MPs or would-be leaders by the Board of Deputies of British Jews. The author, the saxophonist extraordinaire, the Israeli-born Gilad Atzmon joins the programme to talk about that this hour. It is the BBG, not the BBC. Welcome to Tuesday's Richie Allen Show. It belongs to you and nobody else but you. Thanks for tuning in. 5 minutes past the hour already, yeah. Disaster ensues. Don't be having a wee-wee and then realise that the news is coming to an end and you've got to make it up the stairs into the studio, put the headphones on, because it's not good. You know, you need time to shake off the drops. That's what I'm saying. You need time to shake off the drops. I told you, it just gets worse. It'd be better for all concerned if I went back to the Bacardi. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, big Manchester story. Big UK story and very important story. Police and social workers investigating child sex exploitation in this city. Well, in Manchester, of course. Knew the children were suffering the most profound abuse, but didn't protect them. They knew it was going on, but didn't protect them. This isn't news to you and me, because former Detective Constable Maggie Oliver has been on this programme a couple of times talking about this. She was at the centre of trying to get this story out and to get it investigated. Okay? So the press conference in Manchester today, the report was published. This is about a child's death back in 2003. And after the death of a child, the police then identified nearly 100 predominantly Asian suspects, but very few of them ever faced any justice, according to an independent review which reported today. The police operation was prematurely closed down. Maggie Oliver told us all about that because senior officers decided to remove resources away from the investigation. Here is the author of this damning report, and it is incredibly sinister. Here's Malcolm Newsom, as I said, the author of the report.
There was clear evidence that professionals at the time were aware the young people were being sexually exploited and that this was perpetrated by a group of older Asian men. There was significant information known at the time about these men's names, their locations and telephone numbers, but the available evidence was not used to pursue the offenders. The perpetrators appeared to be operating in plain sight, hanging around in cars outside care homes and foster homes and returning young people to their care addresses.
Now, listen to my interviews with Maggie Oliver over the last couple of years to understand the gravity of what he said there. They knew it was happening. They had all the evidence in the world, but they did nothing. Okay? Katerina Vitozzi is a Sky News reporter. She's been covering this for Sky, And she I think very well, I think she very competently summarises the report itself. Katerina Vitazzi, Sky News reporter.
This has been an extremely detailed report. Let me read you some of the key information from it. It determined that police identified 68 possible suspects but failed to take action, resulting in very few perpetrators being brought to justice. The review also said that concerns were expressed about the risk of inciting racial hatred, as the suspects were predominantly Asian. We understand that police found that they work predominantly in the restaurant industry. And finally, that Operation Augusta ultimately failed to tackle the widespread and serious sexual exploitation of looked after children, enabling predators to continue their appalling activities. Now, as I said, Operation Augusta was wound up within about a year of it starting, and it's only now we're learning the full extent of its failings. A lot of the information has been revealed by a former Greater Manchester police officer, Maggie Oliver, who said that she felt it was right and it was proper that the police were held account for their failures.
Yeah, just before we hear what Maggie said to the press today, I want you to keep in mind this claim that there was a fear of inciting racial hatred. I believe that's a massive cover-up. Well, we didn't investigate because there was a great fear that we would incite racial hatred against Muslims in general in the Northwest or in the UK. Yeah. Maggie Oliver, of course, who was a very central part of that operation that was shut down, that Operation Augusta. Have a listen to Maggie. This is her today.
Perpetrators that we knew on Operation Augusta were abusing generations of children were allowed to walk free. The kids themselves that I spoke to, I was on Operation Augusta, I wrote the report. Those children were just cast to the wind, left to their own devices. Nobody cared about them. And I am talking about the people at the top of the police and at social services, the chief constable, assistant chief constables, head of social services, the people who knew the facts, who knew the truth, and they chose to bury the truth.
They chose to bury the truth. And I don't believe for a minute the decision to do that was based on a credible or a genuine worry, concern, fear that there would be attacks against folks of an Asian background. I'll tell you what I believe. I believe the answer is staring you in the face. You can't ignore it. Some very, very powerful men and women, not just politicians. Before I say this, obviously there is an issue with Pakistani men, young men. Not all of them. I happen to know a couple of young Pakistani men, lovely lads. But in some sections in some communities, in some areas, some young men whose heritage would be Pakistani, they've got a very dim view of women, of young white women who might have a drink, who might smoke cigarettes, who might smoke cannabis, and feel that they are fallen, they are dirty, they are fair game. There is an issue there. I've had this said to me by Asian folks. Okay, that's a real thing. You know, nobody should ignore that, and it has to be dealt with. But this whole thing about Islamophobia was a big concern, is a big red herring for me. Because I believe, not only then but now, very powerful men and women, not just politicians, but let's say businessmen and women, clergy, legal professionals, financiers are raping children. Are raping children as we speak. No fearmonger am I. I know this to be true. They say Islamophobia, they say we screwed up, they say, oh, we're sorry we diverted the resources, we made a mistake. There was no mistake made. None. Before Exaro News collapsed, Metropolitan Police detectives retired had spoken to Exaro News and said this had nothing to do with fears of racism or bigotry. It was actually about the highest officers, the highest commanding officers, the most senior officers, shutting us down as we were following the breadcrumbs down certain avenues towards very powerful people. We were told discontinue the investigation. We've got a murder over here for you to look at, or we've got embezzlement over here, or a financial crime, or whatever. Got nothing to do with any genuine fear of a race war. They love race wars, the establishment, don't they? Shocking that. We'll be returning to that tomorrow on the Richie Allen Radio Show with an outrageous, outlandish situation, a story about grooming in Oldham, which is in East Greater Manchester. We'll be talking about that tomorrow on the programme. Now, according to the Times today and other newspapers, the world's oceans reached their highest temperature last year, since records began. However, records only began 60 years ago. So they're saying that the record was broken for the third year running, and scientists have attributed the warmth to the sea's absorption. Let me say that again. Scientists have attributed the ocean warming to the sea's absorption of most of the heating caused by human activity. Right. The oceans apparently absorb more than 90% of all the heat added to the atmosphere by human activity. Well, it must be said, and it has been said by geologists, experts like Ian Plimer, the ocean has been sequestering carbon from the atmosphere, carbon from land, from flora, faunae, animals, not flora and fauna because faunae are animals, of course. Plants, of course, trees breathe carbon dioxide in, they breathe out oxygen, don't they? Animals breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. And the oceans have been sequestering the CO2 since forever, billions of years. Anyway, the authors of this new study said ocean temperatures were one of the best ways to assess the rate of global warming. And be Jesus, the global warming, well, it's unbelievable. It's catastrophic. Advances in Atmospheric Sciences published this study and said the past 5 years are the top 5 warmest years in the ocean, and the past 10 years are also the top 10 years on record. Here's a reporter for Sky News called Kit Bradshaw. What a name, Kit Bradshaw.
This was a major international study, teams in the US and China both involved, and they say the importance of looking at ocean temperatures is because around 90% of the excess heat in our atmosphere is absorbed by the oceans. It's soaked up like a giant sponge, if you like, and they say because of that, if you want to understand what's happening with global temperatures, you shouldn't just look at surface temperatures, but also what's going on under the surface in our seas. And they say that, as you say, 2019 was a record year for ocean temperatures. And in fact, the past 5 years are the top 5 records for yearly average ocean temperatures. And they say that shows that there really is an upward trend when it comes to ocean temperatures, that rise in temperatures over time. And whereas maybe they used to rise more slowly, as the years have gone on, that rate of acceleration is getting more and more. And the lead researcher really has some stark words, some stark comparisons to really get the point across of how serious this is. His name is Li Jing Cheng. He's from the...
Li Jing Chen. By the way, if heat levels in the ocean are rising, it's a natural occurrence. It's got nothing to do with man's activity. We're still emerging from the last ice age. We are warming. The planet is warming, slightly, but it's got nothing to do with the CO2 added to the atmosphere by man, which is negligible. That's a fact. So what about Li Jing Chen? His name is Li Jing Cheng.
Wait till you hear what he says. He's from the Beijing Institute of Atmospheric Physics, and he says the amount of heat we have put in the world's oceans in the past 25 years equals to 3.6 billion Hiroshima atom bomb explosions. He goes on to say this measured ocean warming is irrefutable and is further proof of global warming. There are no reasonable alternatives aside from the human emissions of heat-trapping gases to explain this.
Yeah, no reasonable alternatives at all, not even solar activity. What did Li Jing Chen say again?
The amount of heat we have put in the world's oceans in the past 25 years equals to 3.6 billion Hiroshima atom bomb explosions.
3.6 billion Hiroshima atomic bomb explosions. That's the amount of heat man has added to the sea.
What kind of fuckery are you?
They can say anything. They can say anything and they don't have to offer any proof. Nobody said to him, listen, how did you deduce that? Do you mind telling us, Professor Li Jing Pin Chen or Xu Shane or Bruce fucking Lee, whatever your name is, do you mind explaining exactly how you got to that figure, 3.6 billion Hiroshima events? That is the equivalent of the warming we've added to the oceans. But no, just accept it. Even more laughable than that, I think you'll find this a bit rib tickling, is they've added that figure, and then they've said, and I've seen this today on BBC News 24, they've said 3.6 billion Hiroshima atomic bombs, not Nagasaki now, Hiroshima, and that's equal to every man, woman and child on planet Earth in the last 25 years running 100 microwave ovens. Just make it up. Make it up as you go along. And the crazier and the loonier it is, the more likely it is to make the 9 o'clock news. It's beautiful. It's a thing of absolute beauty. Greta's in the news today, eh? Greta is in the news. I shouldn't laugh. There's nothing funny about it. Don't laugh then, Richie. She's in the news today because she's been inspiring activists in Germany to target certain companies in Germany because German companies are facilitating the building of, petroleum-run railways in other parts of the world. So Greta's minions they're called Greta's children in Germany, have been targeting companies in Germany, companies that are facilitating the building of, the rolling out of new railway lines, but diesel-powered railway lines, which is not good. And I can't believe it. After all the effort we went to make a Greta theme tune, we've not even used it.
They sweep their mess under the carpet for our generation to clean up and solve.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction. How dare you!
We're fucked, according to Greta. Apparently her daddy is running her Facebook page. Yeah. Hey, listen, we'll finish for the moment, 20 minutes past the hour. Very quickly, we'll finish with this very quickly, because Gilad Atzmon is standing by. This made me laugh today in Brussels. It mightn't have been in Brussels now, it might have been Strasbourg. I don't know. But Anne Widdecombe was there. Our Anne Widdecombe, regular guest on this programme over the years. Brexit Party MEP. For now. She won't be, of course, in a couple of weeks' time. And Anne was responding to a European Parliament missive, a European Parliament declaration that freedom of movement across Europe is still very important. And the European Parliament and the European Union wants to try and persuade the UK to keep free movement as part of some future trade deal. And Anne Widdecombe, well, she was livid, so she was.
I'd like to focus, please, on paragraph 18 of the document, which says that the Parliament regrets that the EU has announced the principle of free movement will end. I have to say very clearly that the ending of free movement was a massive factor in the British public's decision to leave the EU. It was one of the biggest driving forces. And yet there appears to be within this Parliament today political myopia towards that. You're actually trying to tell Britain that we shouldn't have an application process. It should have just been declaratory. We shouldn't dare to ask for proof in order to back up statements in an application. The British people expect the British government to end free movement and to do it in a way which is effective, not merely nominal. And the sooner that this Parliament wakes up to that, the sooner we will actually get the right sort of dialogue.
There's nothing wrong with people moving around Europe. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with people moving to countries for jobs when there's a genuine labour shortage in that industry. It's a good thing. None of us are xenophobic. But when you've got people who depend on manufacturing jobs because they haven't gone to further education, they are low skilled. It doesn't mean they're unintelligent. When they find themselves competing for jobs in the towns that they grew up in, with an influx of men and women from Eastern Europe and other parts of the world, it is a terrible thing. And that is what socialists would have told you for many a year. This is the Richie Allen Radio Show, the BBC. It isn't, it's the BBG. Gilad Atzmon is standing by and will join me in a couple of minutes. This is very serious stuff, by the way. Here's Mark Morrison on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Tuesday, January 14th, 2020, the Richie Allen Radio Show, 25 and a half minutes past the hour. It's good to be alive, I tell you. It's good to be alive. There's a guy I meet every morning. How you doing, says I. I'm still alive, says he. That's about all you can ask, I suppose. Labour leadership contenders are falling over themselves to say to the Board of Deputies of British Jews, yes, we will sign up to your 10 pledges. What the hell is this all about? Well, the Board of Deputies of British Jews, whom, as far as I can tell, don't really represent Jews in the UK, but maybe I'm wrong, have demanded that each of Labour's candidates for leader and for deputy leader as well sign up to its 10 pledges to begin healing its relationship with the Jewish community. Apparently, the relationship between Labour and Jews was destroyed by Jeremy Corbyn. Destroyed, I tells you. He ruined it for everybody. It's not fun. So on Sunday, over the weekend, they released these 10 pledges they want people to sign up to. The Labour leadership contenders, Lisa Nandy, Rebecca Long-Bailey, Jess Phillips, Keir Starmer, and somebody else. I don't know who the other one is. Emily Thornberry, that's right. And these pledges include promising to resolve outstanding cases of antisemitism, alleged, to devolve the disciplinary process to an independent agent or arbiter, and to ensure transparency in the complaints process, to deliver anti-racism education programs that have been approved by the Jewish labour movement. This is funny. They've actually asked the candidates to agree to deliver anti-racism education programs to be run by the Jewish labour movement. Yes. And to replace bland generic statements on anti-Jewish racism with condemnation of harmful behaviours and all the rest of it. Gilad Atzmon is a genius musician. He's also Israeli born. He's written books like The Wandering Who, Being in Time. His research in the field of Jewish identity, but also human identity, and identity politics, I think is stellar. I think it's very important. He rubs a lot of people up the wrong way, but then again he would do, because of some of the questions he asks. And I'm sure he's got plenty to say about this. Let's welcome back to the programme. You can find him, by the way, at gilad.co.uk. Gilad Atzmon, it's a bit late in the day, but Happy New Year. How are you?
Happy New Year, brother. We're so happy to hear your voice, man. You already make me laugh.
Well, it is kind of laughable. Look, you know, when you come on, I try and give you a bit of stick, even though I love you. I try to put the other side across. But the notion that we should have re-education programmes run by the Jewish Voice for Labour is a little bit Orwellian for me. Listen, what's your take on this?
I think that you are totally correct, and this is exactly the right expression. And we have to remember that Orwell himself wrote his critical work having the Labour Party in mind. Yeah, he didn't write about Soviet Russia. He wrote about London, 1984 is happening here, And I think that we should really look into this entire situation, because it is fascinating what happened in the Labour Party in the last few years. It is astonishing to see how the British people react to it. And it is also astonishing to see how foolish its leadership is. I think that the first thing that we have to understand is that what we saw in the election was a very, very rare moment in history. Or maybe I cannot think of any case where we have witnessed a popular coup against an opposition party. And this is exactly what happened in Britain in December. The British public said no to the Labour Party, and this party wasn't even in government. Now, a lot of it happened because the Labour Party has managed to alienate its voters, its core supporters. Corbyn has managed to turn his back against his biggest allies, from people like Ken Livingstone to Chris Williamson and many others. The party, under his leadership, as you said, turned into an Orwellian authoritarian apparatus. It has been digging into members' social accounts, digging dirt just to appease one foreign lobby. It is astonishing. The Brits, and this is something that makes me pretty happy and even proud about being Brits, although I'm sure that I'm kind of annoy some people calling myself Brit, despite the fact that I can hardly speak the language. The Brits, yeah, it's okay. The Brits saw all of it.
Have we lost Gilad there? What's going on? He might have dropped out momentarily.
They saw. I'm sorry. Somebody is calling. No, I'm not going to answer it. But I'm connected through the phone. Okay,
no problems. Yeah, no worries. I thought you dropped out. Yes, the phone call is trying to come in.
Ignore the sound.
No problems. Go ahead.
What I was about to say, the Brits saw all of it. They saw how dangerous this party is, and many of them turned their back. Now, I come to our recent development. When we look what is happening this week in Labour leadership, and the way the leadership contenders are reacting to these ludicrous pledges, we understand that the Brits were actually astonishingly clever. And we saw it coming. You mentioned Emily Thornberry. Just a few days before the BOD came up with these ludicrous demands, she had an article published on Times of Israel, a totally Zionist outlet, and the title was "Hands and Knees." We should get on our hands and knees and asking for forgiveness from the Jew. I don't know if you saw it from the
I did see
Jewish lobby. Maybe you were still in holiday.
Yeah, no, I saw it. Yeah.
You know, and the message for the Brits is maybe we deserve somebody, you know, who is going to run our opposition party to have a firm spine bones. You know, and from that moment we see a pretty much a shameless march that involves the entire Labour leadership, and mainly the leadership contenders. Top UK Labour leadership candidate that I just collected some statement now. Candidate votes to lead fights against antisemitism. Keir Starmer, who is the front runner, backs out automatic expulsion of offenders. You mentioned Rebecca Long Bailey. Corbyn bears personal responsibility for the crisis. Jess Phillips basically suspended or removed from her position an aide who compared between the Jewish state and the Islamic State. It is pretty astonishing to watch. You mentioned the 10 pledges that the board is demanding the candidates to adhere to, and there is it's quite astonishing to watch what these demands are. I don't have them in front of me. but they say, for instance, that the labor should never provide platform for those who have been suspended or expelled. Such a demand actually is totally foreign to the Christian and Western idea of forgiveness. So let's say that I did something wrong and I regret it. Will you take me in? Or am I supposed to be a subject to cherem, which is, by the way, a Jewish word, so excommunication, to the rest of my life? The labor leaders is expected to support a bizarre idea, you mentioned it, that it will be the Jewish labor movement, a Zionist organization, will give a kosher certificate to the labor anti-racism education program.
They want to roll this out. If any member of the Labour Party is being put forward to stand, even if it's for a local authority seat, if it's local council, it doesn't have to be national. Anybody who's going to represent Labour on any forum, on any council, corporation, they want them to have to go through this training campaign, basically. This training course, basically, yeah.
A crazy demand there. I don't remember the exact wording, but they basically say that the labor leader should never operate closely with other Jewish. Let me look for it. The BOD, blah blah blah. The BOD, the Board of Deputies of British Jews, it's basically a self-elected body. It's not that the British Jews have elected. However, this body insists that labor leaders should never work with other Jewish, what they call fringe bodies, who are as self-elected as themselves. They refer to the Jewish Voice for Labor. And I'm, by the way, very critical of the Jewish Voice for Labor. Yeah. I'm not advocating them at all. I believe that they are at least as racist as other Jewish bodies, and actually more even racist than Zionist organizations.
Yeah, but there's a very powerful point to be made here. They might well be, but the Jewish Voice for Labor has been very, very, very strong in its condemnation of the anti-Semitism allegations. That bunch of Jewish folks, men and women, have said this anti-Semitism thing is nonsense. And they've all but been, consigned to the dustbin of history by the British media. I've not seen any of these people on any program, whether it's Channel 4 or ITN.
By the way, I think that they are totally right. My problem with them is that, bizarrely enough, within the Labour Party, they are a body that only accept people who are Jewish into their organization. Would the Labour Party accept white voice for Labour or Aryan voice for Labour? Probably not. And this probably is the core of the problem. The Labour Party is a Jewish problem. It doesn't know how to handle it. I don't know if you read an interview that I published a week ago. I interviewed an ultra right-wing Zionist militia guy, Jewish guy, Orthodox Jew in upstate New York. And he admitted to me that actually the progressives, the world politics, Western politics, doesn't really know how to deal with this Jewish problem, how to deal with these difficulties. And he argued that only Jews can deal with him, and he was basically referring to people like himself. When you see what is happening in the Labour Party, especially those people who are supposed to, one of them is going to be the leader of this miserable party, you clearly see that they are clueless, they are stupid beyond any measure we can that is we are familiar with. And it is very important for me to say that I am not at all critical of the Jewish lobby or the Zionist pressure groups. They do exactly what they are designed to do. They are there to sustain pressure on Western political bodies and to make sure that they serve their interest. My criticism is totally on labor in particular and the left in general, and it's very sad for me to admit, and I've been saying it for a few years now.
I agree with this, by the way. Can I come back in? I agree with this. Reserve your wrath for those who capitulate in front of it. Zionists do what Zionists do. They don't make any bones about it. And let me just add this. Very important here. Two things I want to take you up on. You said that I didn't see that interview. I'm going to go and look for it now as soon as the program's over. That'll be fascinating. I'll tweet it out as well, that you did with the ultra right-wing Orthodox Jew Zionist. I want to read that. He said people don't know what to do. They do know what to do. The problem is you can't do it because the landscape is such. Social media is so dominant now. Right, cancel culture, no platforming, people losing jobs, and of course the mainstream media just turns a blind eye to it. People know exactly what to do, but they believe that if they take any steps in that direction, and I've done it, I've taken it on, and I've been in all the papers in the country in the last year for taking it on, but I don't have anything to lose because I'm on my own. I'm a guy who answers to nobody. But for most people, they can't make that leap to take it on. And just before you come back on that, there was a vaudeville moment or a Marx Brothers moment on LBC radio the other morning. You might have heard this. Nick Ferrari presents Breakfast for LBC. And amazingly, last year, Nick Ferrari was sitting opposite Cressida Dick, the Met Police Commissioner. And last year, Ferrari gave her a tranche of documents. And he said to her, here's all the examples that we found of horrible anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. We've got all these tweets for you and all this Facebook stuff. So at the time, Cressida Dick took all the information and she said, we'll get right on it, Nick, because it's for the Jews, goddammit. We'll do what we're told. So off she ran. 2 days ago, the fucker, Cressida Dick, excuse my French, was on LBC radio and Nick Ferrari said, well, how are you getting on? And she said, well, we've recommended 5 cases to the Crown Prosecution Service. And we're not even sure if any of those will be taken to court. Now, if Nick Ferrari was a journalist, and he's not, he's a fat and wanker, he would have said to her, I thought that racism was endemic in the Labour Party. There must be 600,000 members, and we've only got 5 that are worthy of further investigation. This is vaudeville. Gilad, it's fucking vaudeville.
You're absolutely right, and I remember this case. And in fact, bizarrely enough, these 5 cases were delivered. I don't know if you remember, to the Crown Prosecution Services 1 day before the general election.
Yeah. Well said.
So it pretty suspiciously. However, you are right. We are talking about a party of 650,000 members. At one stage, it was. I don't know how many people are in the members of this strange party now, and after all this anti-Semitism nonsense, it came down to 5 people who are not even charged, that maybe or allegedly, being accused of expressing some thoughts that may be racially motivated and so on and so on. And it is pathetic. But what you are really saying here, and this is an astute observation about Facebook, about the fact that we cannot really say what we see, which means that we are not free anymore and calling ourselves a free society is almost comical. It is because, and this is very important to mention it, Jewish power, as I define it, is the power to silence criticism of Jewish power. And this is exactly what Britain is subject to, what America is subject to. And I think that it is a very dangerous situation because a lot of people see it. Someone mentioned the other day that we assume that the number of Labour members who were ardent Corbyn supporters is about 300,000, of something like half of the membership, and this is pretty much the number of Jews in Britain. They see all of it. They know exactly what happened to their party, and what is very frightening for me, and it's very depressing. I'm quite an expert on Jewish history, and as you mentioned, Jewish identity politics. And I know pretty well how disastrous these kind of developments can be and were in the past. Those people who cry 24/7 about Jewish history being chain of Holocaust and suffering and persecution must be aware of the possibility that what they are doing now can have some lethal consequences. And we see that anti-Semitism is now rising. We see what is happening in the United States. I start to see, we have been saying it now for quite a while, that there is growing animosity to Jewish institutions and to Jewish people in the street and so on and so on.
This is staggering now. Let me jump in. This is staggering because you're the only guy who's ever mooted this. You're the only guy. And when you mooted this as a possibility on previous conversations we've had, during previous conversations, I thought that you were stretching the imagination a bit. But I think you're right. And I think you deserve enormous credit. You've said, because ordinary Jewish men and women, and I consider myself to be an ordinary man. I'm an ordinary Irish bloke, an ordinary local bloke. I'm very ordinary, right? And ordinary Jewish folks are oblivious to this as much as anybody else is. I know Jews in this city. I number a handful, a very small group of Jewish folks in this city as my friends. I've gotten to know them. They haven't a clue about any of this. And they wouldn't be making claims that anti-Semitism is at an epidemic level in the UK. They wouldn't agree with any of that. And what you're saying, and I thought you were stretching the limits of the imagination, the idea that this nonsense, persecuted by the Zionist lobby and enabled by the British media and by the British political class, will actually have a very detrimental effect on ordinary Jewish folks because it will increase a real rise in hatred for Jews. Here's the sixth, and brilliant. By the way, I mean it. Congratulations on coming up with that. Is that deliberate, that? Because you say you've seen it in the past, in historical context in the past. But what if it's a deliberate thing? What if those who are the architects of it are doing it deliberately?
So this is a very frightening question to engage in, because as it seems to me, everybody around internalized the moral of the Holocaust, except the Jews who suffered, the people who suffered the most, because they clearly engage in politics and pressure group that, according to their statistics, bringing up animosity against themselves. And the question that we have to ask, and I'm not going to produce an answer because it demands a lot of thoughts, is whether this thing that may be regarded by some as inclination towards self-destruction, it's frightening what I'm saying now, is actually deeply integrated into their identitarian philosophy that is as old as themselves. Was it too complicated what I just said?
No, I got the gist of
it. What I'm basically saying, and it is very frightening, that inflicting disasters on themselves is part of their cultural existence, cultural mantra. Now, this is very frightening for everybody else as well, because I don't want to be involved in your destruction, and you don't want to be involved in my destruction. But as things are, if in my identity makes you hate me, I turn you into an hateful person against your will. And this is very problematic.
Every time we talk, this always comes up. Not this, because we have touched on this before. But I know there are certain Jewish groups in the country listening to this right now. And though many of them don't have the humanity or the decency to take part in the conversation, I'll be them if I can for 30 seconds. I wish they would come on. You know, we're all human beings here. Nobody hates anybody. Nobody blames anybody for anything. You know, let's have a conversation. These are serious issues. Listening to that, I suppose the overwhelming instinct for the Zionists. Now, not all Zionists are evil bastards. You've got some Jews in the Northwest, and they're passionately committed to a homeland for the Jews. You know, some of them, you'll hear from them, they will talk about Palestine and Gaza and the rule of law. You'll have Zionists, you know, you'll have hardline Zionists, and there are levels of Zionists. Some Zionists listening to this now might say, they will say, there you go again. Gilad Atzmon is very clever. There he goes again. What he's basically saying is, the Jews ultimately bring all this angst on themselves. If there is any Jewish hatred anywhere, it's driven by Jews and Jewish identity and the behaviour of Jews themselves. They will say that you're gaslighting them, that you're basically, that's psychological warfare on them. They will say, my granny's gravestone was booted over last week. I had some nasty graffiti put on my car because I wear the skull cap. And this fucker in London, this saxophonist genius, he's trying to tell me it's my fault. Now, I think they might have a point when they say that to you.
By the way, I'll be honest with you. If they would come, and sometimes they come with such an argument, I can see very clearly where they are coming from. My way to address this specific question is to look at early Zionists. Early Zionists, like myself, and I see myself, because of that, ideologically, as an early Zionist figure. They admitted that there was something pretty problematic about Jewish diaspora culture and the way it handles the Jewish affairs, and the way they handle their relationship with their surrounding reality. That brings disaster on the Jews, and this is why they decided to wake up one morning and to take all the Jews away, to promise the Goyim, listen, we take the Jews away and we will work on ourselves and we will re-educate ourselves and we will become good people. This was the mantra of Herzl and Nordau and Beryl Katzenelson and Brenner and Ade Gordon and so on and so on. So what I'm saying here is actually the core philosophy of Zionism. Now, the other issue that I have to raise here, I don't talk about Jews. I'm surrounded by Jews in the music business, not that much in the Palestinian solidarity. I don't trust most the political Jews who operate on the Palestinian discourse. I've met maybe one or two who were trustworthy, but
that might be your own prejudices kicking in there, by the way.
No,
it's
not on prejudice. We can see it all the time. I just published kind of an article of the core organizer of Code Pink in America. She was caught trying to vet criticism of Israel on the case of Iran. It is happening all the time. What I'm saying, I have issue with political Jews, people who identify politically as Jews, but I'm surrounded with a lot of people who are born Jews, and even people who are kind of Orthodox Jews. I find them interesting in most cases. And I never talk about Jews as ethnicity. I never criticize Jews as ethnicity, as you probably can remember. Now, when I spoke about this issue, I was referring to Jewish culture, to Jewish ideology, to Jewish identitarian philosophy. I think that there is something about this philosophy, ideology, identity that makes many Jews into victims of their own culture. They themselves cannot find the route to find peace and harmony with their environment. And this applies to those who identify politically as Jews. Orthodox Jews may be subject of anti-Semitism. This is something that we see all the time. As we probably, as you may as well know, as some of your listeners probably know, Orthodox Jews never really complained about the Holocaust because they accept that there is something about them that raises animosity. But they say, this is our way, this is what we believe, and nobody is going to interfere with that. The people who complain about anti-Semitism, when you see what is happening in Britain, it's not the rabbinical Jews. It's basically a lot of people who look like you and myself. People who are indistinguishable from other Brits.
Because it's a religion. Because it's a religion.
Never been identified in the street as Jews.
We've got about 3 minutes left on this. It always flies when we chat. Well, we're never going to solve this, not just you and me having a chat about it anyway. And we're never going to get around a table with the Northwest Friends of Israel or the campaign against anti-Semitism. We won't. I mean, this is the way it is. It's you and me. Where's it all going to end this? Where do you see this going? I mean, there's a woman called Rachel Swindon. I don't know if that's her real name. And she's a Twitter person. I'm sure you've come across her. And she's a Labour supporter. And she's met with Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. And she has a healthy following on social media. And earlier today, or late last night, she put a post out making some demands of the Board of Deputies. And it was quite funny, quite poignant, kind of interesting. A little bit caustic, but nothing wrong with it. She demanded that the BOD condemn the atrocities of the Israeli military. She demanded that the BOD condemn the removal of Palestinian communities and so on, so on, so on. And it was quite good and quite funny. And then the fucker deleted it under pressure. And that's what I want to finish with. 2 minutes we've got before we run out of time today. If nobody takes a stand on this, if you've got 5 candidates, Labour, and they're all swearing allegiance to the Board of Deputies and swearing allegiance to whatever Jewish identity really is, where's this? If it isn't challenged this properly, in proper public discourse, where's it going to end? I think I know your answer. And you think not good for the Jews, right?
Sorry, I interfered before you finished.
Oh, go ahead.
But we are now discussing the issues to do with the labor and labor contenders' approach to this topic. And I think that the most obvious answer within the context of this discourse is that labor is not an option. Labor is now a defunct political setting, and it is very unfortunate, but this is part of a general trend that we see within the left, within the progressive. They have lost their way. Rather than being consistent with their core values or the values of left that were also consistent with Western values of tolerance and pluralism and freedom of speech, they have turned into the worst possible incarnation of the Orwellian nightmare.
Strong stuff, folks. I recommend, I've said this before, Being in Time by Gilad Atzmon, The Wandering Who, which is an amazing read if you've never read it. Check them out, gilad.co.uk. If you want to read that interview that Gilad referenced earlier on, which I haven't seen, with an ultra-Zionist in New York, sounds like a fascinating and important read.
It was fascinating.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Hey, listen, when are you back on the road up these parts, up northwest? We've got to hook up.
I think that I will be in Britain in 2 weeks. Few gigs lined up. I try to think. I will be probably in your area in April.
Well, I'll be there, mate. Come hell or high water. Listen, as usual, thanks for your thoughts on these issues. I love having you on, you know that. I really appreciate it. Godspeed to you, and I look forward to speaking to you real soon, and I look forward to seeing you in person in April. Cheers, Gilad.
Yeah, nice one, brother. Bye-bye.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
mate. Bye for now. Gilad Atzmon there on the Labour Leadership Contest and the Board of Deputies of British Jews and their 10 pledge, the 10 pledges they are demanding that the new leader of the Labour Party adopt. Extraordinary stuff there. And it's a really interesting concept that, you know, the idea that this will ultimately have a negative effect on Jewish men and women, ordinary Jewish men and women in the country. And that maybe it's meant to do that. You know, these are really interesting angles. And you don't hear that stuff anywhere else. I really appreciate that, Gilad Atzmon. 2 minutes past the hour. We're going to get the headlines from FSN in London, and then in a couple of minutes' time we're going to be talking about 5G, which is massive, of course. Alright, headlines, FSN, it's over to Ollie Barrett.
From Feature Story News in London, I'm Ollie Barrett. France, Britain and Germany have informed the EU they're triggering a dispute mechanism in the Iran nuclear deal. Iran's detained several people over the downing of a Ukrainian passenger plane last week. The African Union says it will hold a new round of Libya peace talks later this month. And UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson says he's absolutely confident the British royal family will resolve the crisis surrounding the future of Prince Harry and his wife Meghan.
Yeah, you're still getting out of that Meghan, Prince Harry nonsense in the papers today, sadly. Keep your tweets coming in. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Look forward to reading your tweets at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. I'll be back with you in about 20 seconds time. Or maybe a minute.
Renowned healer Mark Bayersky travels the world to find the most unique and powerful crystals for self-healing. Since the ancient times, crystals have been used as healing tools. They hold a natural healing vibration and are highly charged in positive energy. Mark teaches how to channel the universal energy and transfer it to the crystal to activate its healing power. Each crystal is used for its unique ability to target a different physical or emotional challenge. Mark Bayersky is an author, healer, speaker, and founder of the Pure Energy Healing Academy. He shares powerful messages of inspiration and healing on his daily YouTube videos, reaching millions worldwide. Mark's crystals, healing oils, and incense sticks are most sought after by other healers. His collection is available online at www.markbayersky.com. His work is presented through Lemon House, a company that creates and curates consciously made gifts.
Yeah, just to put it into context, if there were 5 cases worthy of submission to the Crown Prosecution Service. That's 5 cases of anti-Semitism, right? Out of thousands of tweets and Facebook posts that were sifted through. And if, let's just say, there are 600,000 Labour members, I think there's more. I think Gilad was right. It might be 650,000. But let's imagine it's 600,000. If there are 600,000 members of the party, and if you accept that there were 5 cases worthy of prosecution, 5 as a percentage of 600,000 is 0.0000833%. That's the level. That's according to the Met Police, who had a dossier of allegations of anti-Semitism. 0.00083%. That's outside the margin of error of any poll that you've ever heard of. It's a nonsense to suggest that there's an anti-Semitism problem in the UK, let alone in the Labour Party. Time for a tune. When we come back from that, we're going to be talking about 5G, and it's very important. Right, Miley Cyrus on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Welcome back to the programme. News from Vodafone today around the UK. 5G masts being switched on all over the country. They've got them here in Salford, in Greater Manchester, in Manchester, right across the UK. Are they conspicuous? I don't know. I get asked the question all the time. Where are they? But they're here and they're on. They've been switched on. And I don't think there's anything more serious that we can be talking about right now. My next guest was on the programme to talk about this a couple of years ago. He's a Chief Technology Officer at Revu, and he's a Social Sciences and Psychology graduate from Newcastle College. Really interesting guy. We covered his battle with Gateshead Council in the northeast of the country around the rollout of 5G. I'm going to put out some links on Twitter as to where you can find him. It's been ages since he was first on the programme. I'm delighted to welcome back to the show Mark Steele. Mark, welcome back to the programme. How are you?
I'm very well, Richie. Well, as best as I can be under the circumstances.
You're not going to believe what happened, by the way. I blocked your Skype account. Not because I don't like you or I had anything against you, but I was connected to a Mark Steele account that was also connected to John Kitson. And I thought your real account was a dummy account or a defunct account. So I deleted it, which is why I couldn't bloody connect to you today. And I thought, I'm connected to Mark. We've spoken before. So I apologise for that. I'm a proper plonker. I'm connected to another Mark Steele account that's connected to John Kitson. Anyway, I'm going to ask you a question. It's not negative. I've asked John Kitson the same question. I've asked the same question to 5G awareness campaigners in America. And I don't want to be negative, but I'm going to ask it anyway. They've switched on the technology. Is it too late to stop it now?
We've got to stop it. And they haven't turned it fully. It's not in its full capacity. You know, what I've got to explain to people, 5G is a large basket of different technologies that include smart meters. This is the 5G vision. This is the Ofcom 5G vision. Not my words. This is what they're expecting. 5G, one of its main technical parameters is densification. It means more. That includes telecare, autonomous vehicles. It includes all connected devices. So it doesn't matter what they operate at, as long as it's part of the technical parameter, which is densification, which means more, it's part of 5G. 5G started as 3G PPP, then 4G LTE, and now 5G. It's all part of the 5G plan. It came in 2011, and what they're doing, they're building out the capacity, the radiation in the urban environment. Not only the urban environment, they're also building it out across the rural community. 400,000 5G transmitters. They are beam-forming characteristic radar. It's urban radar, and that's why it operates in the sub-gigahertz. I'm sick of actually listening to people. That was a second. I think I've got some.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Yeah, it's live radio. We understand. Somebody's heard you on the Richie Allen Show. That's what it is.
That's obviously what it is. Somebody's trying to contact us about the Richie Allen Show.
I'm joking. I'm gagging. Right. I'm glad you're laying this out for people, because we do talk about it in generalities. We talk about it in broad strokes, and many people really don't know exactly what it is. They just think 5G, high intensity, microwaves, it's deadly, but they don't understand how it actually works. So this is good.
Right. The deliberate deception by the industry. 4G LTE actually has beamforming characteristics from the antenna. That is the technical specification for 5G. So where you get, a number of the technology companies turn around and say, we're not going to roll out 5G. In fact, there was some characters in London who rolled out a load of these beamforming antenna and then told the residents it wasn't 5G, it was 4G LTE. Well, 4G LTE is actually 5G. It's all part of the plan, of the densification plan. Now, I know people aren't going to believe this. I mean, I know people have difficulty believing what I have to say anyway, because they're extremely unpalatable. However, it doesn't stop it being true. The true plan for 5G is a weapons system. It is not here for telecommunications. It is only a masquerade.
When we spoke 2 years ago, you told me that the technology was actually developed 3 or 4 decades ago. Is that right?
Absolutely. The main technical parameter for 5G is actually collimated beam wave, so it's radar. All right, so that radar in the 40s. The first weapon system was called Mammoth. That was the German development, and that caused significant problems to Allied air crews. It's all secret history. Anybody can go and look into it. It's not as if it's hidden, really. But there was a lot of Allied air crew suffered significant eye problems. In fact, quite a lot of them became very, very sick from the beam-forming characteristics from Mammoth. Obviously, microwave radiation in air, if you increase its beam-forming characteristics, what you're doing, you're compressing that energy into a tighter space. It's basic physics.
Yeah.
This is microwave radiation in air. And what you do is you compress it into a smaller beam. A little bit like, but let's for layman's terms, so that people can visualize this, just think of a laser. Now, I talk to a number of scientists around the world. I end up in having lots of trouble with them because they believe there's not enough energy in this particular, they talk about non-ionizing radiation, and in this part of the spectrum there's not enough energy. Well, I'm going to dispel that now for everybody. A laser can cut stainless steel. It operates in the non-visible part of the spectrum. If anybody thinks that a laser can't do you significant bodily harm, then there's something mentally wrong with you. And I say this to scientists because you will get this mantra where they've been indoctrinated to such a degree where they believe the absolute garbage that comes out of Public Health England and ICNIRP sort of bodies where they state that this technology is perfectly safe, never done any harm. Well, a maser is a microwave radiation type laser. Obviously, the beam-forming characteristics operate completely differently. They're not linear. And what I mean by that it's a bit like a lightning strike, if we can imagine what it looks like, all right? So they can't really control it the way you can control a laser, right? Because it's a different type of technology. And it's extremely dangerous. It's actually battlefield interrogation equipment. It is a weapon. 5G was developed as a weapons development. Bringing it into a cityscape is a crime. This is a crime against humanity. The close proximity, I've actually got a document from Ericsson. In fact, I'll tell you a little interesting story after this. I've got a document from Ericsson that says that 5G will never, ever happen, because each transmitter needs a 150-meter exclusion zone because of the beam-forming characteristics of those antennas. I see these antennas next to schools. I see them near bus stops. I've measured the radiation levels. There's one in Wickham where I measured the radiation at about 50 metres. It was 19,000 millivolts. The maximum I can expose a human to is 200. That's the Council of Europe 1815 resolution and the European 2016 guideline. So the maximum I can expose you to is 200, and this is on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the people who live in the near proximity of that transmitter will die. They will die. They will be murdered. The ICNIRP guidelines only apply to an exposure of 6 minutes.
Talk to us about that body, will you? Because I've had Chris Busby, who's a friend of mine, on my programme many times. The body you just mentioned, as far as I understand, is basically an industry body. It's not made up of any real independent minds. Am I right in saying that?
You know, a lot of people, what actually happens, Richie, and this is one of the deceptions of, let's say, organisations like Public Health England. I'm not defending the ICNIRP at all, because the levels of radiation you can be exposed to are a thermal impact. The thousands of published, peer-reviewed, uncontested papers, and what I mean by uncontested, there's no scientific evidence to show that they're wrong, show that there's significant biological damage well before the thermal impact from microwave radiation. All right? That's why it's a very, very good weapon. Anybody that thinks that the West military and the East military use these technologies as weapon systems because they don't work, because for to believe what ICNIRP state, they wouldn't be able to work. It is absolutely mind-boggling. However, I'm going to put this into context. ICNIRP guidelines came about after, obviously large transmission systems where, let's say, you'd be a transient person going past that antenna, on a road, some military installation, and they stated clearly that the thermal impact is only for 6 minutes. Now, we've got criminals building technologies put on streetlights outside of people's and children's bedroom windows that are emitting radiation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to a guideline. It's only a guideline, not a standard, to a guideline that says you can only be exposed for 6 minutes. Yeah. So the smart motorway, that the emissions that are going to pour down on motorway drivers, the amounts of radiation are going to pour down into your vehicle, are they only going to switch the smart motorway in for 6 minutes a day?
Now, the smart motorway, we're talking about the Internet of Things here. The smart motorway, I'm a driver like yourself, and we constantly find ourselves more and more and more arriving at, areas of the motorway where we've got to slow down to 50 miles an hour, and there are sensors, it's a Wi-Fi thing, it's a microwave thing that is measuring the time it takes from us to get from point A to point B in our car, and it calculates the average speed, and if you're over the average speed, you'll get a ticket in the post. And you are right to say that driving through those stretches of the motorway, you're being exposed to this radiation. You are in your car, like it or not.
Right, well, it's travelling into I'm going to hit on two things. These smart motorways are a death trap. The LED street lights, the LED motorway lights, and the LED street lights that they install them, these are the ones without the diffuser. It's a 450 nanometers frequency. These are blue phosphor-coated LEDs. It's a weapon system. I had a whistleblower sent me one. I broke it down. Anybody can go and have a look at it. The LED street light, it's not a street light. It's masquerading as a street light. This is a weapon. Now, I know people are going to find that very difficult to believe, but what I'm going to explain to you, a weapon is something that is designed to cause bodily harm. The LED installation has got no diffuser. It's a point source. It's what's called a coherent light source, like a laser. They should be classified as lasers. They are pouring a 450 nanometers into your vehicle when you're walking or driving past. The 450 nanometers is retinal cell toxic. It will, as a matter of fact, blind you, cause an assault. The transmitters on the top are radar scanners. I've got images where what happens is drivers are driving into these lights on the smart motorways abroad. They actually increase the power density from the transmitter as a trap to increase the radiation. Now, the problem with LEDs, see, I look at this from a weapon systems perspective, and I know that these light systems can and are and have been used. I've worked with people who develop these systems for weaponry. The LED light is not spectrally balanced. Consequently, because you can't actually see it properly, it opens up your pupil. So you actually open up your eye dilates, so it takes in more of this radiation, which is toxic. So you've got a toxic mix of 450 nanometers. These are blue phosphor coated. The phosphor wears off over time. So every year that light's installed, it becomes more toxic because you get more 450 nanometers frequency leakage. It's about 25% when they first put it in, and eventually over time becomes more and more toxic. You've then got a radar antenna situated on the top that scans you so it can see you. So that damages your retina, and the LED 450 nanometers retinal cell toxic and damage your retina to blind you. So that whole LED street light that your local council have rolled out on top of you, an illegal fitment, experimental in breach of the Nuremberg Code, a true crime against humanity by criminals who have not carried out either public consultation, environmental impact or health impact analysis in relation to this technology. This technology is lethal. It is here to kill. It is a weapons deployment. It is really masquerading as a telecommunications system and masquerading as a streetlight. And 5G is not in space. Satellites are only a mirror in the sky. I've got to get this out there because there's been a lot of talk about people being disempowered because of the 5G satellites. A satellite is a mirror in the sky. The ground-based array, we can affect that, and we can bring these criminals to justice. On Thursday, the police, I was raided at home over the holidays. I don't know if everybody's seen the video. Fortunately, I was actually talking to a guy in Israel at the time. We were doing a Skype call, and the police came to my home, raided the home, searched the home about a light fitment where I'm uncovering a crime. We have had several people in the Gateshead area who've made complaints to Northumbria Police about harm and assault, where people have got skin problems, breathing problems, children assaulted and bleeding from the nose from what's called relay. It's something radar operators suffer from. Children being exposed to this microwave radiation will die. They're suffering significant harm in the Gateshead area. We've had a massive increase in stroke, a 23% increase in stroke from 2014 to 16, and now Public Health England aren't covering it. So the police come to me home because I did a video where I was doing their job uncovering this crime, because this is a criminal enterprise and the police are out to lunch because they're not here to protect and serve. They're here to protect the people, the criminal enterprise who are rolling out this illegal equipment on top of people.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised that the tabloid media hasn't taken interest in those illnesses, in the problems experienced by those children in that area, because some of the tabloids, to their credit, have run fairly balanced stories about 5G. They've referenced Brussels, they've referenced California, they've referenced John Kitson's success, your friend and colleague, his success in the south west of the country, which is brilliant. So where is the reporting on that? Because the tabloids love stuff like that. They love a health scandal like the one you just described. Why am I not reading that in the papers?
Well, the store online, we had an article in the Daily Mail. There was a reporter there. I believe she was warned off after she did it, where we had reports of a number of women who were bleeding when the first LED 5G transmitters were put in. I measured the radiation in their bedrooms. It was significant. 1700 millivolts in one lady's home, and she was having significant nosebleeds. She still has those nosebleeds. It's well documented. She contacted Northumbria Police and made a complaint of assault.
Did she really? Wow. I mean,
cover up. We have a massive crime, a massive cover up going on where criminals are walking our streets. We've got executives in these councils, right, who have deliberately and have ignorantly installed this equipment on a UN Resilient Cities agenda without any environmental impact analysis, any health, as they are obliged in law, no health impact analysis. And the reason it didn't carry out those tests, because this equipment will fail. I can prove it can fail. They took me to court to gag me. Gateshead Council took me to court to gag me and failed. The judge said I was an expert. They said I was a conspiracy theorist. Unfortunately for them, I am an expert because, unfortunately, I've been involved with these sort of technologies for over 30 years.
Yeah, that's right.
And consequently, what happened? I got into court. The judge said, the public have a right to know. This is a democracy. He warned Gateshead Council. Nothing's happening. Now what's happened? They're now changing all the illegal transmitters as we speak in a multi-million-pound cover-up of the genocide, because that was at the same time when they opened up a funeral director's business. I contacted them after the court case because I couldn't speak to them before that because I had an injunction on me. I couldn't speak to any of them, but as soon as I got released from that full gagging order, I contacted the councils, and I contacted Gateshead Council and asked them on a freedom of information request for the business plan for that funeral business, the first council in the country. They've just opened a super morgue next to the crematorium. This is unbelievable. This is the Great Britain, not Eastern Germany, not Germany during the 40s. But that's what we're seeing playing out covertly and secretly.
Now, you mentioned ignorance. Hold that thought. This is important. You mentioned ignorance there. Am I to understand that, I mean, I do believe that compartmentalisation is a real thing. So am I to understand that in Gateshead and in other parts of the country, this has been basically ushered in on the back of the climate change scare? That plays a big part in it, doesn't it? You know, the need for LED lighting and all the rest of it, climate change. So much as I would understand, and I certainly would not criticise you for your anger against these councillors, I try and maintain some level of objectivity. I can understand these people are ignorant. You said it yourself, Mark. They believe that if we don't change the way we live in 10 years' time, the situation will be irredeemable. Therefore, we're all going to die, so we better do what we can. So that's why they get on board with this stuff. That's why police forces get on board with this stuff, right?
The whole thing's a fake. The whole CO2 thing's a fake.
I agree. It is, of course. But most people don't know that. Most people have. You and I would agree on that all day long. But most people, most punters, most people we meet in our daily lives, I tell you what, Mark, having been exposed to the, Extinction Rebellion hysteria, people are terrified. They believe this stuff, my friend.
Well, interesting enough, I think Extinction Rebellion, I think the police are going to register as a terrorist organisation. And obviously, if George Soros is the leader of the Greta Thunberg thing, then obviously I can understand why. So the whole XR thing, I think it was actually set up because obviously, when I first spoke to you, Richie, that blew the whole, that talk we had blew the whole 5G thing wide open. And obviously since then, I've had the court cases where they've tried to gag us, they've tried to get us sent to prison. I've been in court over 5 times now, and it looks like I'm going to court again. I'll be after the police station on Thursday. What I'm going to say to people, the ignorance, it's not just ignorance. Any weapons deployment, I can tell you this from experience, weapon systems are compartmentalized for a reason. And it's the reason for that, so nobody knows what's really going on. So when you speak to an electronics expert, he'll tell you that this is just all crazy talk, it's impossible. What I'm going to tell you is because they don't know. They haven't got the weapon systems background. See, the problem they have with me is I do. Let's try and explain that. If you give a joiner a 2x2, a bit of timber, he'll see a chair leg. You give me a 2x2, I'll see something to hit you with, a club. If you give a butcher a knife, he'll see something for cutting meat. You give me a knife, you give most people a knife, what do you see? And it all depends on your perception of things. So when I see an LED street light that I know is actually toxic, the 450 nanometers is actually used to kill pollinators and pupae. When you do bulk sort of carrying. So when you put on the conveyors, what they do, they wash the corn with a 450 nanometers frequency to kill any biological life in the corn before they put it into the bulk container. So when you're shipping things, the reason for that is because obviously you don't want to get to the other side and you've got a wasp nest or some contamination in the bulk feed. That's the same 450 nanometers LED that's actually on the street light. Kills all pollinators. If those pollinators die, we starve to death. Those LEDs, go and have a look today. Don't take my word for it, because what I always say, what's coming out of my mouth, I'm a messenger, right? All my inventions were all predicated on, weaponry on the battlefield. For some inexplicable reason, I've been put here for a reason. I invented a molecular reactor to disassociate the CO2 molecular bond. I've actually seen that reactor hanging on a telegraph pole in the USA. Some military personnel sent it to me. They asked me what it was, and I said, well, it's a molecular reactor. I invented one. And I said, but at 60 gigahertz, through that radiator, I'll actually change the molecular structure of air, and I can gas you. This woman, she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I can gas you because I can see the way they've built it. It's like a Venturi. So when you turn the radiator on, it actually sucks air up through the bottom and up through the top. I says, and if I put a 60 gigahertz frequency out of that transmitter and I pulse modulate it at a specific pulse rate, then what I'll do, I'll disassociate the oxygen molecule. If you disassociate the oxygen molecule, it attaches, the atoms attach to oxygen molecules, and therefore you get O3. O3 will kill all biological life at 50 parts per million. I'm not making this shit up. This is the science and the technicalities, and it's probably one of the reasons why they hate me, and it's one of the reasons why I get trolled to death from actors who probably, either, like they're not really too concerned about dying. Yeah. I'm trying to tell people, I'm trying to save them.
I wouldn't worry too much about online trolls. The problem you've got is when you've got the old Bill knocking on your door regularly, as you say you have. Let me just bring our listeners up to speed on where we are. Mark Steele is our guest. Welcome return to the programme. First came on the programme a couple of years back to talk about his battles with Gateshead Council and the trialling of 5G technology in that part of the world. He's had a very high profile court case battle with the council there. Mark summed it up earlier on. His summing up of it was very fair and accurate. You've read the paper stories. Let me sum up where we are, because this is quite staggering for a lot of people who are hearing this for the first time. We're surrounded by bus shelter ads and television ads about the dawn of 5G. They tell us that it is the dawn of a new era of connectivity, where using our smart devices, not our laptops or our desktop computers, but using our smart devices, we get a level of speed and connectivity and information sharing at the speed of light which we've never had before. They say you can download an 8 gigabit film, which is a huge file, Ultra HD. They say 30 seconds. It's amazing. Most people that I know, they think this is brilliant. This is science in action. It's wonderful. You have told me, and not just you, but others, men and women from academia, experts in the technology like yourself, as you've proven, your background, have been saying to me, Richie, this is going to kill people on a massive scale. And I've been told by people like you and scientists like Chris Busby and others, that it's a given, it's a guarantee. And not only have you said that to me, but you've said that the people who are behind it, they know full well the health implications for ordinary men and women like us. So the $64,000 question is, Mark, who the fuck, excuse my language, is behind it? Who's behind it? Who's doing it? And why? Why is it happening?
You have to be careful there, Richie. You'll get Ofcom pull you off the end.
Well, not at the moment, thankfully. They're not in. I'm not Ofcom compliant at the moment, thank God. But that's coming down the line. You're right to say that. At the moment, I get away with the occasional swear word. Who's behind this, and why? What's going on? Because this sounds like something out of some futuristic film like Blade Runner, where a terrible, oppressive, dystopian government is trying to kill people. What's really happening here?
Well, it's quite an interesting question you've just asked us there. I mean, people ask me this. I've looked at the capacity in smart meters. I've looked at the capacity, I did a breakdown of a transmitter, Telestra transmitter. These are one of the largest, Telenza and Telestra. They're one of the largest. The one we had in the UK, the target acquiring weapons system we had in the UK was actually called Harvard. Harvard's went into administration, so did WIMAC, and what they're doing with that, actually covering up the crime, which is positive. People have to be positive, because there's no, they would have just carried on. They would have killed me, carried on, but somebody somewhere is stopping it. So people have to be positive. What they don't want. I mean, I did a report for MI5, MI6. MI6 actually made something of it. There's somebody, I'm not going to say who he is, there's somebody in central government who's very, very powerful. They got all the documentary evidence from me, and they came back and said, look, they can't, Cheltenham, they just cannot get their head around what you're telling them. This was well before we did the 5G Apocalypse documentary with Sacha Stone. That documentary was actually developed so it could go out to the US. There was some intelligence agency people there that was spoke to in Marine. I think it was the head of the Marines intelligence group there. That's why that video was done, so it was palatable, so that people could actually see it in the military across the world. That was actually sent out. I spoke with our lot, and obviously there's, people have to understand, the intelligences are at war with each other. All right, it's like, it's a bit like a chess game going on.
Yeah.
MI6 actually covered it. MI6 covered it, and then obviously, the head of MI6, his son had a bit of an accident. There was a lot of shenanigans going on, but that information, what this chap actually said to me, said they just can't, the enormity of what you're saying, they can't get their head round it, because what happened, this has crept up slowly over many years.
So what you're saying, Mark, sorry for the interruption, what you're saying is this is above the pay grade of the intelligence agencies.
This is absolutely above their pay grade. This is above their pay grade. What actually happened, this has come slowly catch a monkey. So what they've done, they've corrupted all of the political class. You've got all the paedophilia, the money, the corruption, Theresa May, all that sort of stuff that went on. I mean, you only have to read the papers, the Times on Saturday, about the banking cabal and the corruption and the signing off of documents using the same signature, all these different names. I mean, forgeries presented to the court. No different to when I went to Newcastle Crown Court, at the county court, where Nolan, Gateshead Council, entered into that court forged documents, and the chief executive is still in place. I mean, this just shows you the type of corruption, and these people on hundreds of thousands of pounds to stand and lie in a court, stood up in a court and said, I went to attack her, right? I actually went to attack her in the council chamber. Fortunately for me, a man called Stephen Preston had actually taken a video of the whole proceedings. That's obviously online. The judge was looking at it. You could see his jaw was dropping, listening to these liars. I mean, the mayor, exactly the same way they'd been coached to fabricate this evidence against me in a court because to cover up the 5G crime.
It's incredibly sinister. It's incredibly sinister. I observed that, and I spoke to John Kitson about that. It's incredibly sinister to see public officials lying through. Look, I'm not saying that I'm naive. I know that public officials lie. But to go as far as that, to claim that you were assaulted by a man and you weren't, and thank God the video evidence was there. These are the levels they're going to in order to keep this quiet. And again, we're back to...
I would have been locked up.
You'd have been in prison, yeah.
Kill them. They had a service officer came here to my home, said I'd made threats to kill. Fortunately for me, there was a copper who was with him who actually told the truth in the court. And if he hadn't told the truth, I would have been they would either nutted us off, or I would have been in a prison cell because of those threats. It was a total, absolute fabrication, but it showed the conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, because you had to have all of those people lied. The lighting manager, he actually turned around and said, when he arrived at the scene, the police were having to calm me down and settle us. The video evidence showed when the coppers got to the scene, I was having a conversation with them and the lighting guys. There was no of them having to, manhandle me in any way, shape or form because I was like some lunatic. The whole thing was a fabrication, but it showed a conspiracy. There's a conspiracy at Gateshead Council to pervert the course of justice, and that's why I'm pretty annoyed about how these criminals can actually just think as if they can break the law and get away with it. Because
since forever and a day, when whistleblowers and investigators have asked questions about, human health impacts, whether it be corporations dumping stuff into a river and the drinking water, or whether it be you asking questions about LED lights and antenna that is very harmful, their modus operandi has always been to try and portray the claimant or the plaintiff as unhinged. It's what they've always done since. Always. Yeah. It's their modus operandi. Because we've got like about 10 or 11 minutes left today, because we will pick this up again, obviously in the very near future. It's going to be a big one this year, and I hope you'll be back to pick up on this again. I believe less is more. People love these 2-hour shows, but I believe you lose the attention of people. I believe 45 minutes is good. People get... I want to go back to friend and colleague of mine, big help to me, Jean Ann, talks about the pollinators. You drive down the country now, you don't have to get rid of the insects on your windscreen anymore. You don't. It's sickening. It's a fact. I drive, you drive. No more do you have to use your windscreen wash to get rid of the insects. God love them. They're not there. It's going to kill people. I've got to come back to this again, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm not trying to get you to say something that might cause you problems, because you're trying to get this to people in Middle England. You're trying to get this to middle income, middle class people who don't watch or listen to conspiracy research. So I know you've got to be very careful about where you go, and I totally appreciate that. But if the lunatics who are behind this, if they know it's killing the pollinators, if they know that it's going to be devastating for people, cancers and everything else that goes with it, brain bleeds, all of that, tumours, you can only conclude, and again I don't want to put you on the spot, that somebody wants to kill large numbers of people. I can't avoid that conclusion looking at the evidence. What do you say?
The evidence is absolutely damning. Like I said, from 2014 to 16, a 23% increase in stroke killed an awful lot of people, and somebody very close to me. I had a really good friend there just less than a year ago. He died, same age as me, 60-ish, a little bit less than 60, and he died of a massive brain hemorrhage. This is going on all over. People only have to look at the anecdotal evidence. Yes, this is a kill grid. 5G is a kill grid. And the more people buy into it, whether it be a smart meter, smart TV, every single transmitter you put into your home increases the densification of the radiation output. Every one of those devices has enough capacity to harm you. If I come in, they all have remote access. I can access all those devices. I can turn them all up at the same time, and I can kill you in your home. That is just as a matter of fact. When I've broke down the streetlight, Telestra had a 3,300 watt relay on an antenna board. I mean, do you know the amount of power? Let's put that into perspective. The maximum I can expose a human to is 1 milliwatt. 1 milliwatt. That's a thousandth of a watt, right? For 6 minutes. 1 milliwatt for 6 minutes. That's the maximum I can expose you to. And these had a 3,300 watt relay. That's a switch which allows me to fire a beam wave at you. Because obviously you don't put a 3,300 watt relay in a transmit on an antenna unless you need to use it. And it also had a bank of capacitors and a supercapacitor that discharges the energy pulse at and through that switch down the antenna so I can shoot you with it. I mean, this is just unbelievable. That's why I say to people, do not believe a single word I say. Do your own research. Follow the videos. Do the research. Look into Brunderman weapons. There's enough weapons stuff out there without even getting into secret stuff here. There's enough weapon system stuff in the public domain for you to understand that that technology your council have fitted on your streetlights is illegal. The LEDs are illegal. They're a point source, basically shining at bright 450 nanometers over the Kelvin power that they're supposed to be. I mean, I've got a report, 3,500. There's a rough, sort of guesstimation about what you can be exposed to. 3,500 Kelvin. All right, that's the amount of energy you can, the amount of light radiation you can get from one of these lights. I can tell you now, those LEDs come from China. They're significantly higher than that because it's a weapon. It's here to harm you. It's here to blind you. It's here to put you out of your vehicle to make you sick. Anybody who's suffering tinnitus, dry eyes, bad heads, anxiety, depression, bleeds from the nose. It's in the streetlight outside your bedroom window.
Hey, speaking about anxiety and depression, do you think it's linked to this recent upsurge in television ads? But not only television ads, Mark. Celebrities from all over, I don't know, the spectrum, whether it be sporting celebrities or television celebrities, everybody is coming out, pouring their heart out about their mental health struggles. Is that a part of the cover-up, really? Tell people, gaslight people, tell people that everybody's got mental health problems, which is what they're doing. Everybody needs to accept that we're all dealing with mental health issues. I wonder, is that part of some cover-up by those who know that this stuff causes anxiety?
It's absolutely, because what they're doing, they're blaming social media, right? Now, people used to be pretty robust. I mean, you don't have to go back a few hundred years. I mean, the ways that were lived, people had to be robust and pretty tough. People aren't that tough now, but it's the anxiety and the depression. We've had a massive increase in suicide rates across Gateshead. Gateshead Council, the research project funded by somebody out of the United Nations who's related to George Soros, believe it or not. Now think about this. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Gateshead is a newer place. It is an absolute newer place, right, in relation to, let's say, cities and towns around the rest of the country. But a United Nations connection of George Soros's funds a research project at 3 of the local universities to show that the increase in suicides, the significant increase in suicides here, is attributed to universal credit and not the experimental, illegal 5G transmitters that they fitted in the area. The 31,875 25 milliwatt transmitters of the company that's now went into receivership, right, to bury the information, because that target acquiring weapon system, blatant target acquiring weapon system, was actually used in South Korea to target acquire wild boar and shoot them in the jungle. Unfortunately for them, I've got the documents, and that's why Northumbria Police will not open up an investigation into the several complaints they have had of genocide, of assault, of harm. I mean, I've got a guy in Bladen. You want to see the state of his skin, Richie? He's burnt from his toe right to his legs, his torso. He's been to every doctor is being in they've done biopsies that do not know what's causing it. You know what's causing it? Electromagnetic radiation. Radar operators in the military used to be called scalybacks.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. Jesus Christ, that's right. And electromagnetic hypersensitivity disorder, I probably said it all wrong. That's a real thing. They've been gaslighting people for years, calling them crazy. You can't be sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. Well, that's nonsense. They can be. I've met loads of genuine people who've had their lives destroyed by, proximity to these things. I'm glad you brought that up. Scalybacks. That's right. They did used to call them that.
Scalybacks, right?
Yeah.
Well, what happened in Cyprus, right? People used to do to us. What they used to do is they'd pick a couple of guys out of a different sort of squads, and then send them to Cyprus. Oh, listen, you go to Cyprus for a couple of months. Fantastic. And the reason they did that, because they knew that the potential of them guys to develop cancers was going to be very, very high. So what they didn't want to do, send actually a group of people from the same place, because then obviously it would be pretty obvious how they developed the cancer. The Israelis want microwave radiation to be reclassified. The Israeli military did a study where troops were exposed to, Iron Dome. Iron Dome in Israel is 5G, by the way. My technical parameter of 5G is densification and the beamforming characteristics of the antennas. That's its main technical characteristic. Even though you've got autonomous cars, they carry the same beamforming type of characteristics, beamforming radar scanners. You've got autonomous cars, smart meters. Smart meters are part of the sub-gigahertz densification plan to kill you, bring down your house, set fire to your home. That whole thing is all part of 5G. But the Israelis, a lot of the military who've been deployed where they've used this Iron Dome, all getting cancer. That study, the Israeli study,
but shows, that's not in the public domain now. Israelis.
I've got the published paper. They're calling for microwave radiation to be reclassified as an IERC.
Is that right? Because I had to challenge that because I've not heard that. So IDF serving soldiers have been exposed at the Iron Dome facility, and you're saying that cancer incidences are happening there. That's really interesting.
These are young men, Richie. These are young men. These are young men. 30s. They're suing the Israeli government as we speak.
Wow, Mark. I didn't know that. I'm glad you've got the documentation. Hey, listen, before we run out of time, two things. I want to ask you a favour. On my Twitter feed today, I've had about 50 questions for you. And some of them are generic, general questions. Some of them are very interesting. So I'd ask you to come back sometime next month to do two things. One, to talk to me about the website saveusnow.org.uk. So I'm going to plug that. To find out more about what's happening to try and prevent this, go to saveusnow.org.uk. Saveusnow.org.uk. I'll put a link out to that. So come back next month and talk about that and take some questions from our listeners on Twitter. I'd really appreciate if you did that, because a lot of very interesting questions came in, Mark, because we're about 2 minutes before we go. So I'm going to give you the last 2 minutes, and as I'm expecting a man of your experience of broadcasting now to stick to the 2 minutes. I'm going to give you the final word, and then we'll arrange something for February, very early March at the latest. We'll do a Q&A, and I appreciate you coming back today. Should have been before now, but I've had Chris Busby, I've had Barry on, I've had John on. I've covered it extensively. I'm glad you're back on today. Final word to you, saveusnow.org.uk, and thanks for coming back. Final word, Mark.
Final word, what I'm going to say to people, get involved, share the information and grow your resistance to this crime. Send email info@saveusnow.org.uk. We've got documents. We've already proven that councils are lying. The technology's uninsurable. They are a corporation. They've got to carry public liability insurance. They don't. So obviously the individuals who are behind the deployment, they are then liable themselves. Get them into court. We've got legal advice. We've actually got a legal team based in London. We're orchestrating through the Crowd Justice Fund. Let justice be done though the heavens fall. Look for that. get involved. We are on the march. People, and I'll tell you this, we are too early. We're far too early in this crime. All right? They didn't think anybody would work it out. Unfortunately for them, I live in Gateshead, and this was the test centre for 5G. And we can see what's going on. So people need to get involved. This is not time to be cowardish. This is not time to put your head down and worry about things. This is time for the resistance to rise. This is our time. 5G is the key to bring these criminals to justice. They've broken the law. They've broken every law that was ever written. They are criminals, and we need to take task. We need to take them to task and put them where they need to be, behind bars. That's if they get past the gallows. We have children dying. I had a 5-year-old boy die of heart cancer in Lobley Hill. It's only ever been attributed to radar operators. These are phased radar signals, dangerous radar signals. And we've measured the radiation in people's bedrooms. It is commensurate with the increase in the stroke, cancer and heart attacks.
Mate.
This is genocide. We have to stop it.
SaveUsNow.org.uk. Mark, thanks for coming back today. I appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking to you again real soon. Thanks for your time today. Mark Steele on the Richie Allen Radio Show. Thanks to Gilad Atzmon in the first hour. Really appreciate both of our guests today. Thanks to you for listening to the Richie Allen Radio Show, going out with Lick the Tins. See you tomorrow at 9:30 on YouTube. Until then, look after yourselves and one another. Until then, bye for now. Bye.